Let's flash back to the year 2013. Kids were wearing silly bands, parents were wearing Google Glass, and everyone was obsessed with a game called Flappy Bird. In this mobile game, you controlled the flight of a goofy-looking bird, moving left to right trying to avoid pipes, and flap your way to a new high score. I only played Flappy Bird a couple times, but I thought it'd be fun to try and recreate the game from memory as best as I could in a weekend. The challenge was to make the game without watching any gameplay or looking at any sprites or design, and see how closely I could recreate the game. Let's see how I did. I started by creating a new 2D project in Unity with the very original name of Flappy Bird, and immediately jumped into designing the titular burb. I used Paint.net when designing sprites because I don't know any better. I remembered very little about the original Flappy Bird except that it was yellow, had a big goofy eye, a prominent orange mouth, and a small little wing. The wings especially gave me trouble, so I ended up looking up cartoon wings online. And voila, we have our bird. Looking side by side, I was pretty far off in my design. I'd give myself about a D+ for bird accuracy. I dropped my bird into the Unity scene, did some rough scaling, made a floor, and applied some gravity to the bird. I moved on to designing the obstacles the bird passes through in the game. I remembered vaguely the bird passing through either a rock or a dirt wall, so I made some generic designs around this. This is probably the most embarrassing flub I made in the design. The pipes are a distinctive part of Flappy Bird, so I get an F, although I was very happy about how the walls look. I added a couple walls to the scene and wrote a simple script that moves them to the left over time. I made it so when you touched your phone screen, a vertical force would be applied to the bird, and after an initial miscalculation of force, the bird started jumping beautifully. The force of jumping was good, but when going up the bird was flat and going down the bird was flat, there needed to be tilt going up and down. After a few unsuccessful strategies, I figured out a way to increase angular velocity when the jump trigger occurred and decrease the angular velocity over time. The angle of rotation was also limited so the bird never faced backwards. Now that I had jumping down, I wanted to auto-generate walls to jump through. I figured out the highest point the top wall could be at, and the lowest point the bottom wall could be at, and I made a script that auto-generated these walls at random time intervals, leaving space between the top and bottom. I also made sure to remove the walls as they exited the viewable area. Finally, I created a zone between walls which would increase the score if the player passes through. I added a simple game over screen that triggers when a player hits a wall. At this point, the core gameplay is pretty much done, and I have to say it feels like Flappy Bird. Looking side by side, I can see the original game is faster paced, and the walls are closer together, but overall I think I did a good job of capturing the feeling of the original game. So I'm going to give myself 4 golden stars. Next, I thought there was a parallax background effect similar to what I found online here. I created 5 sky layers that would scroll in the background as the game progressed. The lower layers would move faster, while the upper layers would move much slower, creating a depth of field. You can see the bottom layer working here. When a layer reaches a given area on the left as it's moving, it generates a new layer to the right of itself. Adding all 5 layers put together gives you this effect. Pretty neat, but how does it compare to the original Flappy Bird? There is no parallax effect in the background for the original. Therefore, we get 3 frowny faces. Putting the finishing touches on things, I added a basic main menu, a persistent high score, and settings where you can adjust both sound and music. Speaking of which, let's compare the sounds. And that pretty much covers Flappy Bird. If you want to check it out, I put a web version you can play on itch.io, as well as download link for the Android version. All code is linked in GitHub below for the project. Thanks for watching.